Daybreak in Jericho. Not the biblical Jericho, our Jericho. The Jericho that's tucked away in downtown Oxford.
Jericho is a state of mind. It's not necessarily a piece of geography.
You rode your bicycle rather fast because Walton Street was considered a bit of a sort of risky area, Jericho.
The students would have parties, and sometimes you get invited to the parties.
Because you're kind of on the cusp of the countryside and you've got the town, and it's a great neighbourhood. It definitely has a villagey kind of feel.
Hannah and Boudica greet the day. Where does Jericho begin and end? This once upon a time working class suburb was built to house workers at Oxford University Press and other local factories. Physically, the area has changed very little. I made a film about Jericho 45 years ago, and when you walk around, it seems superficially much the same. But underneath the chimney pots, there's been huge change. Today, a home in Jericho is very sought after. Instead of being hidden away, Jericho now has artsy credentials. Wow, 635,000 for that. Oxford University Press still dominates a large area, though the presses have long been silent. Over to the south, college buildings, gardens, and the synagogue form a closed boundary. On the opposite side, there used to be an ironworks, but in the 90s, the factory closed down and the site was redeveloped into apartments. Since then, the relentless gentrification has gathered pace. On its third side, Jericho is bounded by the canal, with the church towering above. Along here, yet another new housing development is planned, some would say threatened, and that's a story we'll come on to. Jericho's open side is Walton Street, and here are restaurants, pubs, estate agents, and the cinema. Back in the day, the area had quite a steamy reputation, but now it's mostly upmarket eateries. Coffee shops and the co-op have taken over from the little stores that used to trade on every Jericho corner. Today, the Airbnbs are pricing out the locals, and even the students are getting few and far between. But Jericho's special community spirit is very much alive. There are still people in Jericho who were born and raised here, and the community they created is deeply treasured, especially on Jericho's most important day, the day of the street fair. I think we'd like to go to the pub. I know it's a bit early in the morning for going to the pub, but basically they're just setting up all sorts of food stores and music and, Cripley Meadow Allotment Association flapping in the breeze. God, I wish I'd worn a thicker cardigan. She's a marshal. She's going to organise the bouncy castle or the face painting or
something. I've got it
Or
written
the
down
cafe.
in my phone because otherwise I won't remember.
Tracy's food, she used to run the cafe. Low carbon Oxford, very suitable.
It's a nice festival, traditional street fairs. Not many of them about.
This is the real people of Jericho coming together and putting on something for free through volunteer work, and it's just fantastic.
Oh, it all smells so delicious.
Curry goats, curry chicken, curry veg, everything curry!
At the risk of sounding like a terrible old bat, this is a real community. It really is. People know each other. You say hello to people in the street down there. School is unbelievably good. I used to volunteer there.
The head teacher at St Barnabas School is Fiona Hawkins.
Morning, Roseanne.
She's at the
Morning,
gate
Ella.
every single morning at 8:30
Morning,
to greet
Ella.
the students.
Oh gosh, Maximus, love the glasses. Morning, Tiffany. Morning, morning.
I was deputy for 4 years, and it was lovely because I could work with children in the classroom, and then your job changes as head, but it has just been fantastic.
Tell me one of the high spots you think that has been while you've been here.
For me, it was becoming an eco school. It really involved the whole school in thinking about a worldwide issue. And I just think I want to send the children out from St Barnabas thinking about their world that they're going to make a contribution to. And I hope lots of them will make a wonderful contribution.
Well done. Give yourselves a marshmallow clap. And can you give yourselves a firework?
What are your plans for the next year?
Planning for neater handwriting and
What do you want to be when you grow up?
a footballer.
You want to be a footballer. How about you, Zara?
I want to be an astronaut.
Wow. And you're going to do science so that you can be an astronaut?
Yes. And aerodynamics.
Well, it's never the big things, it's the little things. For me, it's when the child comes in, Mrs Hawkins, I've learnt to do this. Mrs Hawkins, I can tie my shoelaces. And it's just for me that they care about what they're doing, whether it's helping a friend, whether it's learning something. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I've got coffee.
Every year, the school has a big fundraiser, Run Jericho.
Well, it just came up over a late night drink one night to have both an adult race and a children's race and kind of involve the local community. So it just kind of evolved from that. And then we asked Fiona, and Fiona sort of said, oh my gosh, but eventually agreed.
Well, Fiona, how do you think the race has gone?
Really well. It's about 8 o'clock this morning when it was pouring with rain. I was concerned, but it's cleared. There's lots of good humour and they've gone off beautifully, so it's great.
And this is your last race?
Yes, it is my last marshalling, Maggie. I don't actually race.
So how would you describe the neighbourhood, Mr. Ali? Do you think it's a nice neighbourhood? How has it changed?
Yeah, they're wonderful neighbours, actually. We still have few students, but they rather eat out rather than doing shopping and cooking like they used to do in old times.
Hello, good afternoon, Irene. How are you?
I gather that people really appreciate the service you give.
Yeah, it's very good neighbours, actually, and we, my son, he delivers to local old people around Jericho area, and they all loved him, actually, and, we get on very well with everybody.
I honestly don't know what we'd do without Ali and his family and so on. They're hardworking and they're always here for us. And you bump into people here too. It's a real neighbourhood shop.
And it's really the only one left, isn't it, in Jericho?
Well, in Jericho, yes, it is. What's this for? Radio Oxford?
No, we're making a documentary about Jericho.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, well.
Yes.
Good. That's my mind. Yeah. And the church you'll be doing, I'll take it.
Yes.
The vicar's away at the moment.
We've done the vicar before.
Oh, you've done? Oh, fine. Yeah, good.
Okay. Hello, Father Christopher. You're an unmistakable figure, which is really nice.
I hope over the course of your film we'll be welcoming you into the church.
Oh,
because...
indeed. It is a very special church. Can you describe some of the reasons why this church is so beautiful and particular and has a particular history?
Well, because it's so big in terms of its structure, it's rather like an Italian basilica. It doesn't look like a typical English parish. And also the historical connections with the Oxford movement, developing healthcare and education and making worship colourful and full of joy.
You've just arrived. How did the community welcome you?
It's very warm. People have been very friendly and welcoming to me. both inside the congregation and in the wider community. I felt really very blessed and welcome here, and I'm delighted to be here.
I've been running the Jericho Singers Choir for about 7 years, set it up around about the time we were in the middle of the Boatyard campaign, trying to save the Boatyard. And the community felt quite divided in some ways, boaters, residents, and it's just really lovely to see how music is a great leveller and it brings people together in such a lovely way.
So the music is such a variety. We've sung Spanish songs, French songs, African songs.
So the choir has a sort of social life as well as a singing life.
Absolutely, and we wanted to campaign to bring the Boatyard back into Jericho.
To see those boats come rolling over, well, I stood on the river of Jericho to see those boats roll by.
I find it has a kind of timeless quality, like after an hour or so on a narrowboat going up the canal, you feel as though you've been doing it all your life.
Well, it's really beautiful here. I mean, and even though it's noisy, there's the railway and there's thousands of people walking past on the towpath, but you've still got like things like the heron and all sorts of nice little things.
And Elliot, how about you?
So it was originally a financial decision instead of paying extortionate rents as a student in Oxford. But since I moved on, I fell in love with being close to nature, like Ed said, and also the whole community.
So what do you think it is that gives the boat people down here a bad reputation?
Abandoned boats, rubbish, dogs, fires, sometimes drug taking, which happens everywhere, but for some reason, anything that happens on or near the towpath, the boaters tend to get the blame for it.
Yes, it's great. The weather's good.
Yeah, we come every year.
So Peter, when we arrived in Jericho all those years ago, I think the community had just been through a huge upheaval and a struggle to even survive.
When you arrived, that was after a huge struggle against the possibility that the whole area might be simply razed to the ground. Well, with the local politicians and the local community and lots of other people, it was eventually realised that this could be a very special place if you kept a certain amount of the housing. So people were encouraged. People like you and I were encouraged to move. Indeed, we were paid to do our houses up. Can you imagine that? We actually got grants.
Some people got grants.
Grants to improve our houses.
Yes, my bathroom was built on a grant. It later fell down, I must say. Not sure about that.
Of course, in those days, there were around 15, 17 pubs. Sort of 3 on this street, most of which are gone. There are only about 3 or 4 left, of which this is one of the most prominent.
In the last 3 decades or whatever, the role of something like the church, I would say, has diminished a lot in terms of its influence on people's lives.
Well, that's true, of course, except that it was the church that almost gave birth to the community association.
Okay.
Because the church realised that it had a building that it wasn't using, and so they decided, let's make it into a community centre.
The community centre rents out rooms, and there are many group activities. For example, there's one for older people.
We were thinking of a name, and 50 plus seniors, it sounded a bit boring. So we thought we'd call ourselves Alive and Kicking in Jericho, as opposed to the Dead of Jericho. And it's really nice, actually.
I love everybody here. We're all different, but we all get on and we have a wonderful time.
Everybody's happy. You can trust each other, talk about everything. Just, you feel safe. No matter what you say, everybody helps you out, and it's nice.
So it's a good way of getting out, of course, especially at my age, and it's lovely. So is the people.
Barbara, you had everybody to tea.
Cream tea, which included pink gin.
Pink gin?
For a treat. Very nice. Everybody enjoyed it, didn't they, Jenny?
At the other end of life's spectrum, on Wednesdays there's a toddlers group.
Here's Scott.
Hi guys, how are you all? Right. My name is Scott Ellis. I have autism, and this is my 13th street fair. This is my favourite highlight of the Jericho year. So I've just done my first session of the Bouncy Castle.
How many kids did you get?
We only got a couple.
Bouncy Castle tickets here, but down there. Where's the bouncy? Down there on the left. Enough, Maggie?
No, keep at it, come on.
I don't do retake.
Tell me about being a councillor for Jericho.
I'm just always amazed at how lucky I am to represent an area like this, which is so special.
It's become a much more gentrified and it's changed a lot. Do you still think it has a strong community spirit?
Well, I do. People come and go, but somehow they absorb the spirit of Jericho and then they develop it and it remains. It's quite extraordinary.
I like the fact that it's a really good mix. I mean, we've got council houses one side, and then there's people, as I say, around who board in the infirmary who never lived anywhere else. People who work at the press, people who used to work at Lucy's but now moved on since it stopped being a foundry.
Were you a councillor when the Lucy development changed?
Yes, and lots of people were quite sad to see the factory knocked down because it's very important for Jericho. But they're apparently quite good landlords, so perhaps we're lucky.
When Lucy's tore down their factory in the 1990s and replaced it with apartments, this marked a big gentrification moment. Richard Dick, Executive Director of Lucy's. Did you feel that there was enthusiasm in the community for this development, or did you feel that there was a lot of resistance?
I think there was no more resistance than there normally is to people putting up large buildings.
But Jericho people are known for their resistance to all sorts of...
I think in the end most people probably realised it had come to the end of its days. Some were pleased that there was no longer going to be a factory with the associated noise and indeed traffic. A few probably shed tears about the fact that an industry was moving, but to be brutally honest, it had had its day as a manufacturing site.
I gather Richard Dawkins has come to live here. Did you know that?
I didn't actually know.
Yes, right. Apparently. I love these old pictures of the factory. They're really, really charming.
Yeah, an absolutely sort of classic industrial scene.
This is presumably, that's the area of the cemetery.
Yes, well, of course, that's where William Lucy is buried, and it was only relatively recently that someone actually discovered his grave, which we've done up, and we're very pleased to help where we can.
It's actually the Friends of St Sepulchre Cemetery who've done the work on the grave. Can you tell me how the Friends of St Sepulchre got going?
I think I was standing in Walton Street, and people whom I recognized coming by, I'd say, would you like to be a friend of St Sepulchre's? In fact, at the beginning, there were hardly any graves you could see from one end of the cemetery to the other. This was all completely overgrown.
We could sort of see what was needed to be done. I think we had about 65 different volunteers in the last 10 years.
And Wendy and Joelle are regulars?
Yes, and they were at the beginning as well. And then everybody just kept coming. And they just loved cutting things down. They just loved it, absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Is that a wild rose?
What?
Is this a wild rose?
No,
no,
this is a cultivated. Somebody's planted it on their grave, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's very old.
I know the feeling.
If you look in the old movie, you can see the old factory looming in on this very derelict-looking space. And now it's just, I mean, it's charming. We
bought this house for my mother-in-law in 1988, and I moved in here in 2003, so that's what, about 16 years. Yeah.
So you're the newcomer, Jericho.
I am indeed, yes.
What have been the key changes in Jericho over the years you've been here?
Here, when I came, I mean, there were a lot of council houses in this road, because every evening it would be what I imagine is Coronation Street style. People would be on the doorsteps, and there'd be a lot of chat on the doorsteps.
Dare I mention the canal side development, because we would like this to happen in our lifetimes, and we have a new planning application coming in. This is the third developer. This has been going for at least 10 years.
13 years.
13 years.
Everybody in Jericho minds the fact that this place is empty.
Yes.
You know, we walk to the station, most of us, if we have to go to the railway station, and you see these boards with these fancy pictures, and you think, oh, it's sort of, we need it to liven up the place again.
Local feeling runs very strong, so a special trust exists to speak for the community with the developers. Phyllis Starkey is the chair.
The only site left within Jericho to be developed is the canal site. And although the canal runs through Jericho, there's a very tiny section of it at the moment that the public can actually get to. So you've got the boatyard here.
In 2000, British Waterways sold what was then a boatyard for residential housing. Since then, 2 developers have had their plans thrown out, mainly thanks to community resistance.
And in 2012, the site was then acquired by a 3rd developer who has taken a more positive attitude and has started to engage with the local community.
And this will, in the latest plans, become a throughway.
Oh, really?
Because originally it was going to be a cycle path and have a bridge at the end of it,
yes,
which was okay. But now they've decided they need somewhere for their Mercedes.
Oh dear. Some of Jericho's oldest residents love reminiscing about the past.
Here's my old scrapbook. This goes back right to 1990. The Jericho Rejects were just a group of ladies, one man, and we all got together and we started a sing-along. Somebody said, once the Jericho people hear us, they'll be rejecting us. So I said, that's it, Jericho Rejects. Sue with her maracas.
Wow.
And there's Barry.
That's Barry.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
What streets did you live in when you first arrived?
2 aunts and an uncle.
That's right.
And us all lived in Great Clarendon Street in separate houses.
Did all the houses have bathrooms or how was it?
No.
Went
outside loos.
Oh, yeah, you had to put your hat and coat on to go to the loo because it's right in the bottom of the garden.
Oh, right. It's still got a very friendly atmosphere.
Yes, it has. And it's not a lot of trouble really around here or anything like that.
It is a nice place to live because people are friendly.
Used to put a blanket on the pavement, bring your doll's pram out. All the kids used to be out playing on the pavement, didn't need money, if you know what I mean.
But then, of course, there was lots and lots of children. I mean, I think every other house was children and big families, lots of big families then.
When I was a child, we never had a fence in between our gardens, so I used to go through into her house and she'd give me a little drop of her stout.
How many pubs were there in those days, Wendy?
Oh, I was trying to think, and I should say at least 10, but they all thrived and they all done well.
We don't do anything special. We just serve a decent pint of beer and people come in, have a chat, meet up with people. It is the classic corner street community pub.
I literally just typed in open mic Oxford and this is the one that came up and we love this place.
It's only you. It's only you. It's only you. It's only you.
When you stand one side of the bar, you hear every tale, good and bad. Some people almost despise the way that the community's changed. But they're still here, they're still part of it, they love it. Because you get every walk of life in Jericho. Yeah, it's a fabulous place to be.
Jericho will always be Jericho to me.
Yeah, it should be a well-kept secret, to be honest. But it might not be.
This couldn't happen without Dean over there. He's been fantastic. Thanks to everyone for coming along. Forever and tonight, thank you. Appreciate it.
Amazing, isn't it? 45 years ago. 45 years ago. And I've often thought, you know, you should update it.
Yeah.
And somehow or another, I just suddenly decided the moment had come.
Yes.
And the Jericho Community Association backed the idea.
Yeah.
And then we've got the money from the lottery, which was just brilliant.
That's brilliant. Yes. Yes.
You know, so, and when I called Nicola and said, would Film Oxford be interested in doing this, she absolutely jumped at it. So you see, I just feel everything came together, and maybe, you know, this will be the last time we will see Jericho before the Wharfside development brings on a really new change.
Yes.